Hi, I'm Will. Welcome to my 3D games programming and game asset pipeline assignment. In my game, Supermarket Scramble, the player's goal is to gather each item on their shopping list while avoiding hazards, such as other shoppers and water spills. I first created 2 GitHub repos to store my game and models respectively. This way I could version control and revert to an earlier change if anything went wrong. I made sure to make regular commits, usually at milestones. I wanted to have an interesting visual style for this game, so I first created 2 visual effects shaders. I followed these tutorials to aid me. For the stealth shading material, I first get the brightness and compare it to the value of 0.5. If the brightness of the scene is greater than 0.5, the full brightness of the colour is used. If it is less, then the colour will be at half brightness. Next, I get the skybox colour and exclude it from the material's effects. Then, I use depth compression to mask everything out which does not have the render custom depth enabled on its static mesh. For the outline shader, I get each pixel on the screen and sample its depth, and its up, down, left, right, neighbour's depth. The variation rate is calculated using this formula. Variation rate is compared to a given threshold. If it is larger than the threshold, then the outline will be drawn on the object. I created a custom editor widget tool for my outline shader. It allows me to change the colour of the outline if needed. To get the colour value, I first convert it to a stencil value. I then get each actor in the scene. For each actor I get the primitive components. For each component, I set the render custom depth value to true and change their stencil value based on a colour. To change the value of the colour variable, add the details view component to the designer. I created the model seen previously inside of Maya. I used Photoshop's generative AI tool to create new faces for the people on the milk cartons. I then textured them in Substance Painter. This was so I could get an idea of what the game would look like and if I wanted to stick with this visual style. I moved on to creating a basic character from this tutorial. The character uses input actions, which allows me to control the player using a keyboard and mouse or a controller. I also developed the character further by adding a grabbing feature using the physics handle. I wanted to get down key gameplay elements, so I implemented the ability to place items in the shopping cart. I added a Niagara particle effect alongside this to give the illusion items were being placed in the cart. I also added the framework for the shopping list. I moved on to creating a block out of the level using primitive objects. I downloaded a custom skybox from the Unreal Marketplace. I then followed this tutorial to create my own custom water shader. I could then use this shader for puddle obstacles in my game. I next moved on to creating a simple AI. The AI gets a random point within the nav mesh and goes towards it. Once it gets to the point, it repeats the steps. I took the model from Sketchfab and animated it using Mixamo, where I got 3 animations. I've used Unreal's 3D blend spaces to flow smoothly between the 3 animations: idle, walk and run. The animations change based on the AI's speed. I then created a water obstacle which makes the player slide when they stand on it. It simply changes the ground friction and braking deceleration of the player when they enter the collision. I created a timer widget and game win and lose widget. The player will trigger the win widget once they have collected each object. The lose widget will trigger once the timer has reached 0. Currently, both widgets reset the game. I animated a camera shake for the character to make it feel like the player was moving. When the player is idle, there is a gentle shake. When the player is moving, the camera shakes more. I added the Steam audio plugin to my project, so I could dynamically manage sound clips later. I moved on to modelling the rest of my store. I gave the objects bright material colours, so I could easily distinguish what was what. I created all of my assets inside of Maya and textured them inside of Substance Painter. Some of the textures I used in Substance Painter required editing in Photoshop. I then created swinging doors using the physics constraints components. The player is able to smash through these doors. I next added some basic lighting into my scene. Unfortunately, after playtesting the game for a bit, I found that the game was simply not interesting. So I decided to implement the chaos physics system to make it more interactive and interesting. Unfortunately, this came with a lot of problems as the game would run very poorly. After doing some research into Nanos, I was able to get a smooth enough gameplay experience. There are still some improvements which could be made, but I'm happy with it currently. I added the remaining items to the player's shopping list and scene. When an item is collected, it is checked off the list and placed in the cart. Each collectible item has a particle effect to distinguish it from other items in the store. To begin with, I created a new level outside of the store. This is where the player would begin the game from. Outside the store, I created terrain using the terrain tool. I also used my previously made water shader to make a lake. The lake is simply a plane with the water material on it. I then built the outside of the store using primitive objects. Once I had a convincing outside of the store complete, I decided to add some doors for the player to travel through to get into the next level. Inside the outside door blueprint, there is a box collider. When the player collides with this, they'll be sent to the next level. With the outside of the level complete, I moved on to sounds. I found most of my sounds on Freesound, with the exception of the background music, which was taken from Incompetech's website. The enemy has footstep audio which is played at different volumes depending on where the player is. The closer they are, the louder. The further they are, the quieter. This dynamic audio is handled by the Steam Audio plugin. The sound is played on each footstep. This is done with the animation notifiers. The player footsteps shares the same sound as the enemy. This sound is played when the player is travelling over a set speed. To prevent audio stacking, it is played every half second. I edited the door sound using Audacity, as originally it did not have enough punch to it. I simply increased the gain and exported it. The sound is played each time the player enters the collider on the door blueprint. With the sound completed, I added the final touches, which was the menus. I created two levels for the main menu and the tutorial page. When the levels start, they open their respective widgets. The main menu widget is made up of two buttons, Start and Quit. Start takes you to the tutorial level, Quit makes you leave the game. The tutorial widget is made from an image in Photoshop and one button, which takes you to the game. I also have a pause menu where the player can resume, restart, and quit the game.